What's going on, guys? Thanks for joining us here today on the Budget BBQer, where today I'm going to show you how to smoke a delicious pork butt on a Masterbuilt electric smoker. Let's check it out. Okay, first we have got the pork unwrapped and we have dried it with a paper towel. Now we're going to rub it with mustard and season it on the meat side first. Okay, now that we have rubbed the meat side with mustard and seasoned it very thoroughly, we're going to flip it to the fat side because we're going to cook it with the fat side up. First, we're going to score the fat cap. So we're going to draw our blade across the fat cap, cutting just down to the meat in about 1-inch chunks. Now we're going to coat this side in mustard and then season it. Make sure that you work in between the grooves. Season between the grooves as well. Don't be afraid to season this fat side very liberally. This is going to melt into the meat and we're going to mix it in later as well. Alright, so now while the seasoning is working its way into the meat, we're going to get the electric smoker set up and get this heated up, ready to cook. First thing, I'm going to make sure that the pan is full of cold water. Now I'm going to pre-fill the chip tray with hickory and apple chips. Now we're going to load the hopper with our chips as well. That's going to allow for the chips to begin smoking already while they're waiting to be turned over and dumped into the pan. Set the smoker for 225 degrees. Set the time for 20 hours. It's not going to take that long, but I hate having to reset the thing. Now the smoker is warming up and we're going to go get the pork shoulder and put it in as soon as the smoker is over 200 degrees. Alright, so now that the smoker is coming up to temp, we're going to go ahead and put the pork butt in. Now I want to point out that with the vents over here, we only have them about 25% of the way open. And the reason for that is we want to make sure that we're not choking off the chips at the bottom. However, we also want to keep as much smoke inside of the smoker as we can while allowing the fire to continue to burn. Now once again, we're going to cook this fat side up and we're going to put the bigger end with the bone side on the same side as the heat element. Okay, so as you can see, we've put the pork butt in. Now I've got the rack set in the middle, just over the water pan. Now, the reason for that is we want to keep it close to the moisture source so that the meat doesn't dry out. But also, I've found that putting things up on the top rack tends to dry them out even more. So, this is kind of that optimal zone, at least in my electric smoker, so that might be a tip you can use. It's probably going to go about 8 hours until we've got the bark that we want on the outside. The reason we're going at this lower temperature for the first while is to ensure that we give the opportunity for the fat to render down. Alright, so we put the pork on at about 10 p.m. and at this point we've cooked it for about 10 hours. I took a look and the fat is rendering beautifully. So now we're going to go ahead and bump the temperature up to about 250 degrees to finish setting the bark. Alright, we gave the pork another 2 hours at 250 degrees. So let's take a look at the bark. Beautiful. The bark is looking great. You should now see a nice dark color all the way around. So now we're going to wrap the pork in foil and continue cooking until it's probe tender, usually around 205. Overlap 2 sheets of foil that are about 2.5 feet long and fold their ends together and roll it a bit to seal the bottom and keep the moisture inside. Wrap the pork tightly in foil. Ensure that the bottom seam is folded and rolled tightly, then return it to the smoker. Now that it's wrapped and back in the smoker, we're going to increase the temperature to 275 until it's probe tender. Alright, we cooked another 3 or 3.5 hours at 275. It's been on for about 16 hours total now, so let's check it out. We're going to insert the probe into the meat. You can see how it just slides right in and out easily. That's a good indicator. The temperature is coming up right at 205 degrees right in the center. You can check it in a couple places. If you can feel that probe tenderness sliding in easily, you know you're done. Alright, we've turned off the smoker and now we're going to pull out the pork shoulder, open it up, put in about half a stick of butter and several spoons full of brown sugar. Then we're going to close it back up tight and put it in a dry cooler for at least 1 hour to rest. Alright, we decided to rest this pork butt for about 3 hours today. Now it's dinner time and we're going to shred it up and eat. First thing, watch how easily this bone will just slide right out. Now to pull this pork, all we're going to need to do is simply just dig our hands into it. You can see it's just coming right apart. You can see how that fat is all rendered out of that and the meat just falls right apart. I like to mix it up and mix the darker and lighter cuts as well as the pieces of fat from the top. But you can see you don't need any fancy shredding claws to pull pork. So if you do, you've done your pork wrong. Now that's a delicious looking pork butt. Alright, now I've coated these in my sweet and tangy Carolina sauce. Let's give them a try. That's good pork. I don't care who you are. Thanks again for joining us here today on the Budget BBQer. I hope you enjoyed this recipe as much as our family does. Now if you like the recipe for our sweet and tangy Carolina sauce, then make sure to leave us a comment down below and we'll put that together. Also, don't forget to look at the description for the recipe, including the recipe for the rub that we used. And finally, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we hope you'll join us next time.